Hi, Katie here from MontessoriForHomeschoolers.com. I wanted to show you guys the new Montessori Reading Games workbook. So this has been released before as a shelf work program, and with the number of children I have at home and their different ages, I wanted everything to be in a workbook, and also for anyone purchasing colorful printed material, it's really nice to have it all in one space rather than just in a big digital download on your computer. So this is available from print in a print version, and it's also available as a digital download. So you can choose however you want it to be delivered to you. But I just wanted to go over, it's very, very similar with some differences for the workbook style. And this is great for kids who need a little extra practice or who enjoy working out of a workbook. So here we have the table of contents, and everything you can use check marks, you can use slashes for attempted and presented and mastered, some intro pages explaining why everything is the way it is. I had some notes. This is the first printed version, so there may be a couple edits since this version. But here is like a unit overview. So there's a pronunciation guide, some reminders. Children can use this section for mastery, for going back and coloring in possibly if they master a letter sound. And the pronunciation guide, we use one letter sound when we're first introducing letters in Montessori. And then a handwriting guide. This will be different if you purchase the print or the cursive version. This is the print version. And then my daughter's already done some of these intro pages just as we were testing it out. Here we have I Spy per letter, and you could make this into shelf work by cutting out the red portion, and the teacher can use the guide, or teacher can use the directions for a script. And then this can also be shelf work. Here you're coloring anything that begins with green and yellow. So every unit has 4 letter sounds, and everything that you need is included within the workbook pages, but I do suggest just using a couple other hands-on things, and we'll talk about that actually right now. So here we're sorting, so we do you do I Spy for one letter sound, I Spy for a different letter sound, I Spy combined, and then this is another I Spy combined. It's a sorting activity. So there are some printable cards in the appendix back here for every letter sound. So for just the different sound groups, and they're separated by 2 sounds at a time. And then, but we can also use miniature objects. So this can be shelf work with the picture sorting cards, or it can be shelf work with miniature objects. I don't know if I have the right ones in here. So I have, no I don't, but I have a couple for like, where do we have? Suitcase, would go in slide, marble, magnifying glass, and there are other options. But you could use miniature objects, and I have that written out, and there's also a suggested like list of household objects you could use. And then even the sandpaper letters are printed into the curriculum. So if you buy the printed version, on the backs you will also have like colored paper. So the color goes through on both sides, so that if you were to cut these out and make them into actual movable pieces of paper, then it would be colored on both sides. You can laminate them and then add your tactile, or you could just leave them as is or reinforce them onto poster board or something if you chose, or cardboard. Anyway, so they're on here, and then different directions too about sorting sounds. So here we actually introduce the formation of the letters, writing them properly, left or right-handed, depending on your child's preference. And then we go on and the activities repeat for the next 2 letters. So I Spy isolated for two new letter sounds in the sound group. I Spy Combined. And then here we have a sound sorting activity based on alligator to tiger. And you can have your objects, or like I said, you can use the pictures, the picture cards in the back. Kids who like to color love stuff like this. I have one who loves to color, so she's loving these kinds of activities. And here you can see these sandpaper letters have not been made yet, but what I did is I just added liquid glue and then craft sand and shook it off. But I also like to either use pipe cleaners glued on, or glitter glue. Like Elmer's Glue makes glitter glue in like the regular school's glue size glue bottle, and that's a really, really good option. And again, if you purchased it printed, you have front and back on the same color. The digital download does not have these colors on the back to help save ink for those of you printing at home. This was Bingo and Go Fish, which is here. And I cut them out and laminated the cards. So these were here. And then these cards were in here. And I cut them out and laminated them so that they could be reused easily. So on the back, if you buy the printed version, you have the colors on the back. It does help a little bit to not be able to see through, but you can still kind of see through. For any of these games, it really does not matter. And you would be able to kind of hide them too, to play Go Fish. So if you had them in your hand, you may encourage holding them like that or using a card holder to not see the backs. And if you're printing at home, this could be an activity you may want to print on cardstock. But I find that if you're just using it with one child, and since it's a consumable workbook, you really don't need to laminate much. You can just use it as is and cut out what you need as you need it, which is another reason why I love having everything in the workbook. So here's another example. So this is my letter sound adventure. The game board is here in the back. So this is the game, same game as we had in our previous edition, except now the game board is a little shorter and it's only on one piece of paper. So the other game board was huge. It was on 4 pieces of paper. This can just be folded up into your notebook and used on one piece of paper. Since you're going to be using it so much, I would suggest laminating it if you have that ability. But if you don't, just keep it in a folder next to your workbook, or even reinforce it with some cardstock or poster board. And the letters or the cards don't need to be laminated or anything. You can just use them as is and the game will play just fine. And then here we have, this is a letter picture cards. So let's see. So this is for Scavenger Hunt. So there's a different game to play for every time you have a new set of letter and picture cards. This time, so these letter and picture cards I did laminate for durability. And on the back, so this is map, on the back of each card is a control of error. So that starts with an Let me move that out of the way. I guess I can leave it here. So you would just invite your child to sort the cards on the top of the mat, the letter cards, and then underneath, sort the picture cards. Now these are smaller than the original version so that they would fit in the workbook, but I also find that my children have no problem working with cards of this size. So if you have a, anyway, you can see kind of how big they are in my hand. So then you would invite your child to sort them. And then for this one, there is a scavenger hunt. So there are scavenger hunt cards that are in the appendix that give clues as to where to find the next card, and you can have fun hiding those over your house, all over your house, and inviting your child to search for the cards and say the beginning letter sound. The next activity here, or actually, so then we have another activity, activity 12 in unit 1, and this is writing in sand, so that is something that you would do next to the workbook. And it is also making these letter sound books. So these would be in here, and you could decide to leave these in the workbook instead of cutting them out if you wanted to. If you wanted to keep more of the materials in the workbook, every child and every parent will have his or her preference, and you just go with it, what works. So I laminated them so that we could reuse them. So these would become a little booklet, and there's one more card, but these would become a little booklet, and you can staple them on the left or bind them however you like. And then I put them, if you want to make it into shelf work, you can put them in a little container with a dry erase marker, and your child can practice handwriting on these banded lines, which are great for beginning handwriting. And you'd end up having 6 little different beginning sound booklets if you made them this way. And then this next activity, these are a set of 4 clip cards. So you could put them in a little container with a clip, and then there's a control of error on the back. So this is the sandwich, so that would be clipped. You could put a clip there, flip it over, and see if that is indeed for sandwich. Now, control of error is on the back. This is also within the workbook pages. Let me show you an example. So here's what the clip cards, here's what everything would look like if it remained in the book. So here are your letter sorting cards. So you'd cut them out and invite your child to sort underneath. And then there's always a different game suggested to do with these cards. It was Scavenger Hunt before, and there are several other games, a different one for each unit. And then here are your sound booklets. And on the back, your handwriting. You could leave it in here and have your child work in pencil. You don't even have to cut these out if you just want your child to practice saying the beginning sounds like g, g, galaxy, g, g, garage, g, g, gate, r, r, rattle, rocks, rain. And then on the back, practice with a pencil. Or you could cut them out, laminate them, and use them as shelf work or as with a reusable dry erase marker. And again, here are the clip cards. You can cut them out, have them look like this, or you can leave them in the workbook and have your child circle the beginning sounds. And on the back, see if that is the correct picture. Now moving on to the almost last activity for each unit is our movable alphabet. And what's really cool is I have made these movable alphabet organizers. So what you can do is remove this from the workbook and put it inside a manila folder. So you would adhere each page to one side of the open folder, and then add a strip of paper with glue on the little dotted lines, and you can file the cards into each container. And then what you're going to use is, so as you add to your movable alphabet, you will add to your movable alphabet folder. So your child will only have the letters available that she has been introduced to build words. And the sound building cards, which I'm about to show you, only use the words, the letters that your child has been introduced in that unit, and then any of the previous units. So this is the word sat, and there is a key in the back. So sat, so you would invite your child to find the s, find the a, find the t, and build the word. Same thing, mat. Now these, you can choose to cut them out. I have in most of the units, they are back to back so that you can cut them out, and that you have 2 double-sided cards. So you would have, one card on one side and one card on the other if you wanted to make it into shelf work, or you can just as easily leave it in the workbook. If you wanted to use the real movable alphabet, there is room for you. Well, that's not the right word. Sat. There we go. So you could use the real movable alphabet, and you would have plenty of room. What we have also done in the past is used stamps. If you're going to leave it inside the workbook and not as reusable shelf work, you can use alphabet stamps. And I really like the set made by Melissa and Doug. They have a number and letter set that goes together. But there is room if you would like to use the movable alphabet, and there's room for handwriting if your child's even further along than that. And then lastly, we have a unit assessment at the back of each unit. So there are directions here for handwriting, recognizing letter sounds, matching up beginning sounds to the beginning picture, and then word building, and then some hints if your child needs some extra practice, what you could do. So then that just repeats. And in the back, you have just some extra materials. This is Scavenger Hunt cards, Scavenger Hunt checklists. I've used some of them. Dice for some of the extra games. You have different game suggestions, game pieces, your movable alphabet, household item list, your picture cards. Then we have handwriting with some strokes on there, your handwriting guide. And then if you buy the printed version, your child can actually, without laminating anything ever, can trace on top of each letter and practice next to it. Because this has a shiny like gloss cover. So you could use that as your handwriting. But what I like is that you can use it inside the workbook, and there are many pieces that you can take outside of the workbook. But if you're somebody who likes to leave things in, like even the bingo pieces, you can leave the bingo game boards inside the workbook and just cut out the cards to use. You could even leave the sandpaper letters inside the workbooks and sort underneath if you have another set that you want to use instead of what's inside the workbook. So just lots of options and changed into workbook format. I hope you enjoy.